Hey, this is Mark Watch from MTC Media. Throughout the college basketball season, I'll be making appearances on AWOD Radio 910 The Fan, talking all things college basketball. So please enjoy my latest appearance. So, when did you want to become a coach, and just how did that happen where you transitioned from being a player to eventually getting into coaching?
Well, you know what? When I was a high school player, I played for Ed Young down in Norfolk, Virginia at Northview High School, and I always wanted to be a coach. Now, Ed Young used to tell me all the time, like, you're going to make a much better coach than you are a player. You know what I mean? And actually, the words that he spoke out of his mouth, I remember at a banquet, he said, Ivan is going to make a hell of a coach one day. And I was 17 years old, and I gave the speech for our team at the banquet. And but I've always known I wanted to be in the field of coaching or athletics and leadership. That's just, I think, I'm fortunate, one of those people that knew, what his gifts and talents were and what I was kind of destined to do. And so, I started as a high school coach at the age of 24, and then became a high school head coach at, I think it was 27, and had plenty of success at Edison High School, and then had great success at T.C. Williams High School, winning a state title. Then went down to Kickertan High School and had great success down there, winning the district, winning the region, and it led me to go to college. I always had inclination of going to college when I was a high school coach, but priorities happened first too. I had 3 kids. My wife was in residency, finishing her residency at Johns Hopkins at the time. And so then, I stayed on that route for a minute, and then eventually, I would say, in 2014, Coach Cooley walked in my gym at Kickertan High School. I never forget, and he just flat out said, I value you a lot more than the actual player that he was recruiting, and he said, you belong in college coaching. I want to hire you. And 2 years later, he came down and he asked my wife if he can hire her. She said, yeah, if that's what he wants to do. And I was hired from a high school coach to a Big East assistant. And so the rest is kind of history in terms of how I got into this. And it's been 10 years now. So,
What's the typical day look like on a practice day like today for an assistant coach? Like, what are the responsibilities? What are some of the things that you do?
right. Well, the typical day is everything that, put on Coach Cooley's plate is typical day of an assistant is try to alleviate some of those things to make, the process and the job of coaching these young men just a little easier. First of all, you gotta get them good players. That's the first and foremost. You have to. The primary responsibility is making sure that you have adequate and the best talent that you can get for your head coach in terms of the league that you're coaching in. We got to make sure we got Big East talent. And taking over this program, that's one of the focus points that he made sure we want to do, which, me being from the area, I know is to lock down our area. So our 24 recruiting class is a reflection of what we plan to do in terms of recruiting for and rebuilding this program. But that's one of the central things, is making sure you have adequate and good talent around you, because no matter your X's and O's, if you don't have the talent around you, the Jimmys and Joes matter a little bit more. The other thing is, I just think player development and building rapport with players as much as you can. The act of being a head coach is more of a CEO. Coach Cooley has so many things on his plate in terms of building a program. It's 70-30. He probably gets to do like 30% of basketball and 70% of, all of this stuff, media, fundraising, institutional things that he has to take care of. So the role of an assistant is to make sure that you're connected to the players, that you can, blend his message across the players and make sure they understand it. So then when he's giving his message, they're right there on target. They're synced and hand in hand. So I think that's a big portion of it as well. And then, the day-to-day X and O things that you got to do in terms of helping your head coach make sure that, the players are in the best position to be successful for the program. But I think any assistant, and me working my way up to being an associate head coach, is to, help, the day-to-day organization of the players, player development, community relations, and being a leader for Coach Cooley in the community. I think those are central responsibilities.
You talk about recruiting. How has recruiting changed from when you were a player to now trying to recruit a kid as a coach? How has the environment changed with that process?
Well, I think the recruiting, has changed drastically. Some people say for the worse. I think if you have that type of mindset, it's going to be difficult for you to recruit. My mindset is that it's still relationship. Everything's a relationship. You got into this. The mission of why I got into this is to effectively change the lives of young men through athletics. And so when I'm recruiting you, I have the fortune to be recruiting to a man that I truly believe in. We talked earlier about your son, and I have a son. I like to say that I would recruit my son to come play for Coach Cooley because I believe in him as a man. Forget the X's and O's. Just he's going to do right by that young man as a person, as an individual. So when I'm going out there, I'm not selling or a used car salesman. I'm selling a real person that I believe in, because I think, it's still a relationship. They all have goals and dreams, but while they're in your circle, you're trying to help them become better men. I think the difference of how it's changed, even though it's relationship, it is now transactional.
Yeah.
There is some bit of transaction that has to go along with it because that's just the nature of the business that we're in now. Yes, I'm giving you a great education, but there's other things that they would like to evolve, with the social media, with name, image, and likeness, that they want to benefit from that if they come to your institution and deliver what they're supposed to do. They want to capitalize on their name, image, and likeness. So we have to then provide them, different ways of how they can do it. And so it becomes a little bit of transactional in that piece after you build the relationship. So I think that's the biggest difference that has changed. When those conversations during recruiting, as little as 5 years ago, was not considered. It wasn't considered transactional. The transaction was scholarship, come play for me. I'm going to put you in the best opportunity to be successful. This is how I'm going to use your role. But it's a little bit more than that now, and as we evolve into, name, image, and likeness world.
Parents are spending more money than ever on training. And you used the term player development, and there is a big difference between player development and training. If you had a piece of advice to give a parent who is looking to get their kid some sort of training, what are some of the red flags that you would say that they should look for so they don't end up essentially spending money that they're not going to do any child any good?
Well, I think I've met a lot of good trainers. I met a lot of, people who are good at their craft. The thing that I would say with player development, in order to have player development, you must play. You must be on the floor to actually play. A lot of people look good in individual workouts, but our player development comes through that individual workouts, but also with the ability to play, to develop. We have Drew Fielder, one of our freshmen. He's going through player development right now, but he's playing. He's playing 27 minutes a game, or, he's playing and he's going to develop. So I would say this to parents. Yes, you can pay for your individual training, and that's good, but make sure that they're in an environment where they can play and develop. It's hard to develop if you're not playing. If you're in a program where you don't get a chance to flourish, make mistakes. And sometimes you might have to go to a program that's going to allow you to be on the floor to make a mistake or two to develop. But I think that's the biggest portion of player development is, do you actually get the opportunity to put the things that you're training on individually into use and fail at it? Okay, you make a mistake, you fail at it. Are you coming right back out of the game, or are you going to be able to grow and gain confidence from making that mistake again, or seeing what mistake you made and then being able to execute the training that you put in 3 nights or 4 nights a week with your individual trainer? So, some trainers are good, I would say, but the key is being able to play. And then how hungry is your young man or young woman on their own to, because if you always need a trainer to drive you, then that in itself will be a red flag.
Awesome. So, Providence, when you left, was pretty well established of what your brand was, what you guys do, how to sell Providence as far as to a recruit. Now you're starting over at Georgetown and you're building something. What has that process just been like, starting anew and starting over?
Well, it's been exciting. It's been exciting because we know what this brand can do. We know what this brand stands for. And then we bring Coach Cooley with his, larger than life energy and effort and enthusiasm, and it makes it easy to sell. And you connect those two brands. We feel like it can be something special. We talked before about player development. That's what we were known for. We weren't known for getting great, 5-star players at Providence or, 4-star. We developed them. We developed them by being in the gym with them and then giving them an opportunity to fail on the court, and they grow. I think here with our, system of player development and our assistants do a great job of recruiting to what fits Coach Cooley. We recruit to what fits him. And we're going to have a plethora of people to choose from in the DMV area. The toughness, the grittiness, the enthusiasm that he likes within a player. I can see this transformation happening sooner than later. And I just think it's just been exciting for me to be back home, to be back in this area. Anyone who knows what Georgetown basketball has been in the past knows what it can be. And when you mix, the energy of Coach Cooley, the passion, the brains, one thing, he is a brilliant X and O coach, and you mix that with talent and then the player development that we offer through our players and from our staff, I just think it's a recipe for success that's going to happen. And I think people in the city can feel it growing and growing and growing. And we're excited about where we have to go. And, even this group that we have now, teaching them our culture. So we're excited.
When you're going out to look at this talent, especially if you're in a place like the EYBL, any of the shoe circuits, how do you determine what court you're going to go to? I don't think that people who don't coach or haven't had a child play on those circuits don't understand that there's like 9 courts, 10 courts going on at the same time. How do you limit it down, and how many times do you run into a kid in a game that maybe you weren't initially going to look at, but he's made you stop and say, hey, I need to look at that kid?
Yeah, that's happened a few times now. It's courts that we already know between the 3 assistants, myself, Coach Battle, Coach Blaney, and Coach Cooley. We know, we meet before we head out, identify a few of the players that we want to make sure that we show them that we're there and that we're interested and that we're coming to evaluate you and check you out. And so we have the courts already mapped out in terms of where we're going, and we split them up based on priority of who is a priority, based on, we have a war room or recruiting board of players that fit Coach Cooley, and by positions as well. Whether we need that position in 24 or 25 or 26, we start well in advance in terms of identifying that talent. And then, yes, it always happens. When you evaluate and you're going to watch Johnny and you see Timmy is pretty good, and so you write his name down and you begin to keep an eye on him, and just to see his development and just see if this wasn't just a one-off, a good game. And so we pay attention to the little things, how you carry yourself when you step on the floor, what happens when you get with a foul, how do you treat your teammates, how are you moving off the ball, are you tough? Certainly you have to be tough mentally and physically to play for Coach Cooley. It's just one of the things that we as assistants have come to look for. You can be overly skilled, but if you're not tough, it's going to be tough to play for Coach Cooley. And so, when we go evaluate those courts or those players, it's pretty much already identified in terms of where we're going, but it always happens that you pay attention to a couple of players that that the other team is going against, and you go, ooh, that's a pretty good player. Somehow there's certain teams that bring out the best. We've watched, Takeover. We've watched, of course, Durant, Team Thrill. Those teams are, some of the local teams that we New World. We kind of identify, and then across up and down our recruiting ties, we see other teams, and then of course they battle against those teams, bring out the best in people, and you see a couple of players that can also play for Coach Cooley, and then you just begin to identify.
What could coaches on that level do better to be more attractive to coaches as far as what you guys are looking for on your level?
At that level, I think, there are some really good coaches. 'Cause I used to be on that level. I used to be an assistant coach for Boo Williams as well for 13 years. I think more is just allowing, and I know it's hard on them. They have so many good players. Just allowing more of the players to play, because there's some talented guys on that circuit that is hard to get them in. It's hard to actually get them in the game because it's so competitive. They're under the same gun as we are, trying to win, to make Peace Jam, to make certain things. So I think, it's tough to say. They're in a difficult situation in terms of they only get a certain number of games, only a certain number of time. They can't play everybody, and they're trying to win. That's the beauty of really the EYBL. I think it really does mimic the competitive edge of college basketball and even NBA basketball. It is a competitive league, and all the shoe circuits are pretty competitive. But I totally get what they're trying to do. I'm not sure if there's anything that we could do if we see that they can do better, other than we would like to evaluate more, because that's just the nature of who we are. We want to make sure we're getting it right. We're getting the right guy, and the only way we can do that is by seeing them play multiple times and seeing a variety of people play.
Go back to your playing days. Who was the toughest player you played against in high school?
In high school, the toughest player I played against was absolutely Joe Smith. It was Joe Smith, number one draft pick, Terps. Joe went to Maury High School. We went to I was at Northview High School, and he dominated. He dominated the 757 basketball at that time. Him and Allen Iverson, and that was he's probably the toughest. Joe Smith and Allen, just point blank. I think Allen destroyed us in a summer league game one time, but those two players were undeniable. One of the few of the toughest players that I ever went against.
How would your recruiting sheet look like if you were evaluating yourself as a high school player? What would you have said?
He's a coach. He's a coach. I was that guy that did all the dirty work. I can handle it a little bit. I can shoot it a little bit. But you would say he was the coach. I galvanized my teammates. I was a winner. I just wanted to win. I'll do whatever it took. And every that's what my high school coach told me. I was. You say, oh, he's a coach. He's just a coach. He's a coach. He's a guy that, a glue guy. He's a coach. I knew how to put teams together and how to motivate teams, and that's kind of always been my strength.
Cool. Yeah. Awesome.